Today, I want to talk about one of the new wave Azur Lane commanders that I probably overlooked on first glance, and that would be Azur Lane Tallinn. I've got her at the helm of the legendary tier Soviet cruiser, or you might consider it a Soviet battleship in the cruiser slot, the Stalingrad. That's right, Tallinn on Stalingrad. It almost rhymes. I'll show you the build on the screen here. We've got Makawa and Norman Scott as the two inspirations. Makawa is for a little bit more concealment. Norman Scott, where I've got him almost fully maxed at rank 16 Legendary 3. He, of course, improves Cruiser Sigma by 4.75% at this level, and I think that synergizes pretty well with what Azur Lane Tallin's unique skill set is trying to do. So as we push into this cap and take our first shot at the Alsace, we're going to start turning around to kite as the FDG pushes in, and, well, not a great idea for the FDG. I don't know why battleship players, especially German ones, think it's a great idea to just drive straight into a capture circle in the first, 5 minutes of the battle, but that's what FDG is going to do as Alsace over there posts up behind the island after getting hit fairly hard from these Stalingrad guns. And, well, you'll see why you generally don't want to push into a cap this early on in a battleship. We've got Velos out here, who is more than likely going to be able to torpedo the FDG, or maybe farm him from the safety of a smoke screen, but either way, we'll be able to get some good shots on him as time goes on, and you might be looking at these salvos and thinking, well, those don't look particularly accurate. Well, if you feel that way about the Stalingrad or any of the other Soviet cruisers, maybe Riga, for example, Azur Lane Tallinn is probably a good solution to that problem. Her base trait is called Memorial of Ice and Iron, and what it does is provide a bonus to cruiser main battery shell dispersion and grouping per consumable use. Now, I've got her at rank 16, Legendary 4, so she's fully maxed. But fully maxed, it's a 1% buff to dispersion and sigma for every consumable use. And you can stack that up to 7 times for a maximum of a 7% dispersion and sigma buff. And that's not all either. The rest of her skill tree matches the skills that you could get on some free-to-play Soviet cruiser commanders, like the Beyond Range skill in the first row, the Crisscross in the second, Intuitive in the third. But once we get to the fourth row, we've got the unique skill Bulwark of Rhyme. What it does is provide a bonus to consumable cooldown per main battery hit. And again, at rank 16 Legendary 4, it is a 1% bonus to consumable cooldown time per main battery hit. You can stack it up to 20%. So at this point in time, where we've got 33 main battery hits, I think we've already stacked it to the max. That means our consumable reload time for the heal, the radar, and I would assume the DCP as well, is reduced by 20%. And of course, she has fully packed in the fourth or in the legendary row of skills, so you can get an extra consumable. Now, she might be a better choice for something other than the Stalingrad, because ultimately we have 3 consumables: the DCP, the radar, the heal. There are some Soviet cruisers that have more. I believe the Talin is one such example, but you've also got the Petropavlovsk at Tier 8, which has sonar, radar, and a heal. I think the same is true of the Riga at Tier 7, and she'd probably be a good choice for either one of those, particularly the Riga, whose guns, I think, are sometimes quite trolly. This might help even them out a little bit. But on something like the Stalingrad, this thing is already very accurate to begin with. The dispersion numbers don't look particularly inspiring when it comes to the horizontal dispersion, although the vertical dispersion is excellent. And, well, the horizontal and vertical dispersion are both worse at maximum range, but at close range, very good. The Sigma, however, and keep in mind, this is just with Norman Scott as one inspiration. This would get better with every consumable use that we use in this battle, but without that, and with just Norman Scott, we've got a Sigma value of 2.51. And theoretically, we can buff that all the way up to 7% with each consumable use. Although I don't know that we're actually going to be reaching that point anytime in this particular battle. Anyway, this is just another demonstration of how ridiculous Stalingrad is. If you don't have it, it's prohibitively expensive to acquire, but it only is acquirable by GXP, which is, of course, a currency you can grind for free by just playing the game. You'll have to play it for a long time to acquire the necessary GXP, but if you can, I would say it's worth it because I still think this is one of the most powerful cruisers in the whole game, if not the most powerful. I would actually call it overpowered, although nobody really seems to complain about it all that much. Anyway, as of this point in the battle, we've dispatched the FDG, the Salem has gone down, not to our guns, but to somebody else, and HMS Incompetent out there is giving broadside to our position. Maybe it's a little bit rude to refer to him as HMS Incompetent because he didn't really know we were there, but, well, you don't want to give broadside to the Stalingrad. Just ask HMS Incomparable there. He goes down for, I believe, our first kill of the game, and we net 2 citadels. And at this point in time, we still haven't used any consumables. We probably will here in a moment, and that is going to start improving our dispersion and our sigma. There's the heal and the radar simultaneously, so that's a 2% buff, 2 sigma, and dispersion. And do we see really any results? I don't know, it's hard to tell since we're basically shooting at this Alsace at point blank range. Got to be careful of the GK out there. If we push in too far, and the Somme for that matter, if we push in too far though, we're in a crossfire between the GK, the Somme, and this Alsace. Not that the GK is paying attention, but if he ever notices us, we would be in trouble. So, the thing to do right now is to take down this Alsace. He doesn't look like he's going to be floating for too much longer, doesn't seem to want to angle against the Stalingrad guns, perhaps does not respect them. Well, you should respect them. There he goes for our second kill of the game, and we should be able to go dark here since Somme is smoked up, farming our broadside a little bit with AP and doing some decent damage. But we're going to have the heal back up soon. We'll use it just for the Sigma and Dispersion buff. And here we get a nice, rather long, medium-range shot at the GK. Hits for 5k, 3 pens, not too bad. 1 ricochet, so that's 4 shells out of 6. Accuracy seems pretty good, but somebody takes down that GK. And unfortunately, this has turned into a little bit of a blowout. I like to avoid showing too much of these on YouTube, but when it comes to discussing a commander like Azur Lane Tallinn, I felt this was a decent example. There's Somme there, completely out of smoke, spotted by the friendly Shimakaze, who hopefully is going to shoot at him with his main battery guns. Nope, torps. Well, there's some main battery guns, not from the Shima. We might need to help this guy out. Shimakazes don't ever like to fire their main battery guns, in my experience. But Somme smokes up, too little, too late. We don't even need the radar. There he goes for the 3rd kill of the game. And all that's left is a cruiser that has, well, he's kited back to the map border. You can see him on the other side being pursued by one of our friendly cruisers. He ends up here, sort of in the E10 or D10 grid square inside of a smoke screen because he's a Genon. He's got torpedoes coming at him from whatever destroyer this is, the Shimakaze, I think. And maybe we have him all to ourselves. I don't know. We've got a battleship behind us, so we're just waiting to optimize the damage here for when he turns mostly broadside, which he doesn't fully do, but of course we have improved pen angles on the Stalingrad. There's 4 pens there between the overpens and regular ones, and only 1 ricochet. Janan begins to shoot at us, but this is all futile. He's got no chance now, not with these many ships left in the game. Another good hit with a Citadel that nets us the high caliber metal and brings our Citadel total up to 4, as well as our damage done up to 159. And that's the end of the battle, with the sinking of the Genon. So, of course, we end with a glorious victory in Stalingrad once again. Azur Lane Tallinn at the helm. Bottom of the leaderboard, or not bottom, sorry, 2nd place on the leaderboard behind the Shimakaze, who, even though he didn't use his guns, maybe I shouldn't have made fun of him. Clearly, that was a Chad Shimakaze. You love to see it because most of them end up on the bottom of the leaderboard and out of the game in the first couple minutes. So actually, you know what? GG to that guy. And I think I'm going to have to be testing out Azur Lane Tallinn on things like the Petropavlovsk next, or maybe even the new Soviet cruiser with the battleship guns, the Sevastopol. That might not be a bad idea either. A lot of consumables there. But I hope you enjoyed the video. If so, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.